Some moments don't arrive with loud arguments or dramatic endings. They arrive quietly, hidden inside ordinary conversations, disguised as simple questions that seem harmless at first. But sometimes, one sentence is enough to change an entire life forever. Before we begin today's emotional true story, take a quick moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Every story shared here explores the hidden emotions, difficult choices, and unforgettable moments that many people experience but rarely talk about. If you enjoy heartfelt storytelling, you're in the right place. Now let me tell you about the night that changed everything. People often believe betrayal begins with lies or obvious secrets. Mine didn't. Mine began with a single question spoken across the dinner table so calmly that, for a few seconds, I thought I had imagined hearing it. Even now, years later, I can still remember every tiny detail from that evening. The smell of garlic bread drifted through the kitchen. A pot of pasta sat between us, slowly cooling as we picked at our food. Fresh laundry rested in a basket near the hallway, waiting to be folded after dinner. The dishwasher hummed softly in the background, creating the kind of peaceful noise that usually makes a house feel warm and safe. Our children were already asleep upstairs. Emma had insisted on hearing 2 bedtime stories before finally closing her eyes, while little Liam had refused to sleep until I checked under his bed for imaginary monsters. Like every other night, I kissed both of them, tucked their blankets around them, and quietly closed their bedroom doors. I had no idea that only minutes later my own world would begin falling apart. Daniel sat across from me scrolling through something on his phone while absent-mindedly eating his dinner. He looked exactly like he always did after work, tired, distracted, emotionally somewhere else. For a while I talked about ordinary things. Emma's upcoming science project. Liam's stubborn cough. The family dog destroying another pair of shoes. I wasn't even sure whether Daniel was listening anymore, but I kept talking because silence between us had become even more uncomfortable than one-sided conversations. Then he slowly placed his fork beside his plate. He looked directly into my eyes. His expression wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was almost thoughtful. Then he asked a question that still echoes inside my mind years later. What if we took a break from our marriage? Just for a while? Everything inside me froze. For several seconds I honestly believed I had misunderstood him. I blinked. What? I even laughed a little, expecting him to smile and tell me he was joking. He never smiled. Instead, he calmly repeated himself. I'm not talking about divorce. I'm talking about pressing pause. A little space. A reset. Those words sounded strangely peaceful coming from his mouth, but inside my heart they exploded like thunder. A reset? Was our marriage suddenly a business project? A phone that needed restarting? A contract that could simply be paused whenever life became inconvenient? I stared at him, unable to process what I had just heard. That one sentence opened wounds I didn't even realize had existed. Looking back now, I realize our marriage hadn't fallen apart overnight. It had been disappearing slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Maybe that's why I didn't notice until it was too late. 3 years have passed since that dinner. 3 years of replaying that conversation in my head. 3 years of wondering whether I truly lost myself that night, or whether I had already been disappearing long before Daniel ever spoke those words. The strange thing is that there wasn't a dramatic fight. No shouting. No slam doors. No accusations. Just 2 people sitting across from one another, while forks gently tapped against ceramic plates. Sometimes that's how life changes. Not with chaos. With silence. Sometimes the smallest conversations leave the deepest scars. If you've ever loved someone so deeply that watching them slowly drift away felt like drowning while standing on dry land. If you've ever smiled in front of your family while secretly falling apart inside. If you've ever questioned whether love was still love, or simply the memory of what it used to be, then perhaps you'll understand every decision I made after that night. You may not agree with every choice. Honestly, I'm not sure I agree with them all myself anymore. But they were real. Every emotion. Every mistake. Every sleepless night. This is the story of how one unexpected request changed not only my marriage, but completely changed the woman I believed myself to be. My name is Sarah. I'm 34 years old. Several years ago, I worked as a high school English literature teacher. I loved my classroom. I loved discussing novels, poetry, and stories with teenagers who were just beginning to understand the complicated world around them. Watching students discover confidence through writing gave me a happiness that's difficult to describe. Then life changed. When our second child was born, Daniel and I agreed that one of us should stay home. After many conversations, I decided to leave teaching behind. At the time, it felt like the right decision. I wanted to experience every first step, every birthday, every school performance, every bedtime story. I promised myself I would eventually return to my career. Weeks became months. Months quietly turned into years. Without realizing it, my entire identity slowly shifted. People stopped calling me Sarah. I became Emma's mom. Liam's mom. The woman who remembers snack day. The one who volunteers at school. There is absolutely nothing wrong with motherhood. In fact, it became the greatest privilege of my life. But somewhere along the journey, I stopped existing outside everyone else's needs. Every morning began before sunrise. Preparing breakfast, packing lunches, finding missing shoes, signing permission slips, driving children to school, buying groceries, cleaning bathrooms, folding endless piles of laundry, cooking dinner, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, then doing it all over again the next morning. The days blurred together until I could barely remember what I enjoyed before becoming responsible for everyone else. Once upon a time I wrote poetry, not because I wanted anyone to read it. I simply loved putting emotions onto paper. Sometimes I wrote short stories, sometimes little journal entries, sometimes random thoughts that only made sense to me. Eventually those notebooks disappeared into a drawer that rarely opened. Every month I told myself I would start writing again. Every month life became busier instead. The woman who once dreamed of publishing stories slowly became someone who celebrated finishing the laundry before dinner. And somehow I convinced myself that was enough. Daniel wasn't a cruel husband. That's probably what made everything even harder. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't dishonest. He wasn't careless with our children. He was dependable, responsible, hardworking. He spent long hours working in finance to provide a comfortable life for our family. From the outside we looked like a successful couple living the dream. A beautiful house, healthy children, financial stability, smiles and family photographs. No one could see what was quietly disappearing behind our front door. Because emotional distance doesn't always leave visible scars. Sometimes it simply replaces conversations with silence. When Daniel and I first met, he noticed everything. He remembered exactly how I liked my coffee. He could tell I was nervous simply by watching my hands. He surprised me with handwritten notes. He laughed at my terrible jokes. He made me feel interesting, important, seen. Somewhere along the way those little moments disappeared. Not because either of us planned for them to. Life simply became louder than our relationship. His work demanded more hours. Our children demanded more attention. Responsibilities multiplied. Romance slowly became another unfinished task waiting on tomorrow's list. I can't even tell you the exact moment we stopped truly talking to each other. It happened so gradually that neither of us recognized it. We still shared meals. We still slept beside one another. We still attended birthday parties, school events, and family holidays together. But emotionally, we had become strangers living remarkably organized lives. And perhaps the saddest part was that we both pretended everything was perfectly fine. Every marriage changes over time. At least, that's what everyone kept telling me. The honeymoon phase doesn't last forever. Life gets busy. Kids change everything. I heard those sentences so often that I started believing the emptiness inside our home was simply part of growing older together. Maybe this was normal. Maybe every couple slowly stopped laughing. Maybe everyone eventually sat across the dinner table speaking only about bills, grocery lists, doctor's appointments, and school schedules. I wanted to believe that. Because the alternative was far more frightening. The alternative meant admitting that we weren't simply busy. We were becoming strangers. There were evenings when Daniel would arrive home exhausted, loosen his tie, kiss the children on their foreheads, eat dinner almost silently, and disappear into his office to answer just a few emails. Those few emails usually lasted hours. By the time he finally came to bed, I was often pretending to be asleep, not because I wanted to avoid him, because I no longer knew how to begin a conversation that actually mattered. The distance between us wasn't measured in feet. It was measured in everything left unsaid. Sometimes I'd catch myself watching old videos on my phone. Family vacations. Birthday parties. Our wedding. I would pause on little moments where Daniel looked at me the way he used to. His eyes would light up when I entered the room. He'd reach for my hand without thinking. He'd laugh before I even finished telling a joke. I couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at me like that. What hurt most wasn't anger. It was absence. The absence of curiosity. The absence of affection. The absence of being truly noticed. One afternoon, while folding laundry, I found one of my old notebooks hidden beneath a stack of winter blankets. Dust covered the faded blue cover. When I opened it, I found poems I had written years earlier. Some were clumsy. Some were surprisingly good. But every page reminded me of a woman who believed her voice mattered. I sat on the bedroom floor reading until tears quietly rolled down my face. Not because the writing was beautiful, because I couldn't remember the last time I had written anything just for myself. I gently closed the notebook and whispered, "Where did you go?" For a moment, I wasn't speaking to the notebook. I was speaking to myself. I tried to save our marriage. More than once. I suggested date nights. Daniel agreed. Then work interrupted. I planned weekend outings. Something always came up. I asked if we could simply sit together after the kids went to bed without our phones. He smiled apologetically. Tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. Next week became next month. Eventually, I suggested marriage counseling. He wasn't excited about the idea, but after weeks of asking, he finally agreed. For several sessions we sat across from a therapist who gently encouraged us to speak honestly. I talked. Daniel listened. Then he quietly repeated the same explanation every week. "I'm just stressed. Work has been overwhelming. I'm tired. I still love my family." None of those statements were lies. But they weren't answers either. The counselor asked him what he feared most. He stayed silent. She asked what he wanted from our future. Another silence. She asked whether he still felt emotionally connected to me. He looked down at his hands before finally saying, "I don't know." That answer hurt more than if he had simply said no, because uncertainty leaves room for endless hope. Hope can be cruel when nothing changes. Life continued exactly as before. Morning alarms, school lunches, soccer practice, grocery shopping, birthday invitations, parent-teacher meetings. The calendar stayed full. My heart stayed empty. There were mornings when I'd catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. Dark circles rested beneath tired eyes. My hair was usually tied into a quick ponytail. Comfortable clothes had replaced the dresses I once loved wearing. I wasn't trying to impress anyone anymore. The truth was, I wasn't even trying to impress myself. I had become incredibly efficient at taking care of everyone else's needs. I simply forgot that I had needs too. Loneliness is strange. You can experience it in a crowded house. You can feel completely invisible while standing beside someone you've loved for years.